Hello YouTube, hi. This is the Truly Stupid Noob. I want to start a tutorial on how to use Darkrift 2 and Unity. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at making tutorials. I ramble a lot, jump from topic to topic, and I speak usually too fast. But unfortunately, I don't see a lot of Darkrift 2 tutorials on YouTube, which is a shame because I think it's a really good tool. It's first of all, it's really good and it's free. So I hope more people can use it. You want to use Darkrift 2 if you want to make an authoritative server rather than peer-to-peer. And if you are following this tutorial, I assume you know about ports, networking, and how to set up a server. Uh, if not, you can always leave a question in the comments. I'll try to answer it, but I have a lot of things I'm juggling. Perhaps I can give the tutorials more priority if it does well, but we'll see. I'll try my best. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Darkrift 2 and Unity, especially Unity, since that's a whole topic to itself. Unity is a very complex machine. There are tons of tutorials. You can watch hundreds of hours of tutorials of Unity and still have questions and have problems creating an MMO. So I don't have all the time to go through that because we have Unity tutorials on YouTube and much better than what I can deliver, way better. But we don't have a lot of Darkrift 2 tutorials. So I'm assuming you've studied C Sharp, you've studied Unity, you're comfortable with Unity, you have some basic idea of network programming, and if you are very confident, perhaps you don't need to watch this tutorial because I'm not very good at it myself. I can barely get things running. But I did release an MMO using Darkrift 2, and it's not perfect, but it works. So I invite you to check that out. It's on the link. I know I've been rambling a lot, but I know there's a lot of disclaimer. Okay, so I need to talk about what Darkrift 2 is. So Darkrift 2, like I said, is an authoritative server where it communicates to different clients and between server and client. So it first of all, Darkrift 2 has two parts: one client side and one server side. The client side is Unity, so it's a Unity um, component that you attach to any game object, and it will communicate and look for a Darkrift 2 server, which either runs on your computer or on a distant server. Um, I was gonna show you diagram, but I guess let's open Unity and start a new project. If you will forgive me, I will import all the assets from my previous project so that I'll have assets to work with and not have to get it from the Unity store. I will try my best to build everything from ground up, and if you want to find out where I got those assets, you could download my game that I have linked and check the credits. I will list all the credits for all the assets that I got used in the game, and it should be pretty obvious which assets are which. Okay, so you could first I'll import my assets from my previous game. So my previous game is called Ploxe Online, and I exported most of the assets over here. What I want from these packages is the UI. and the fonts. We'll just give it a moment and while it compiles and unpacks. You can fast forward until this is finished. Okay, so we finished importing. We're going to delete our sample scene. That's the scene we have right now. And I will drag all of these scenes into a folder called old scenes. So we're not going to touch these scenes because they're from the previous game. We're going to create a new one. So we'll create a new scene. Let's call it login. So we're going to create a login, hopefully from scratch. First thing you want to do is you want to go to the asset store and get Darkrift 2 from the asset store. So Darkrift 2. I want to mention that Darkrift 2 is free and allows unlimited clients. The old Darkrift and a lot of other services, they provide limitations. For example, you cannot connect to many clients or you must pay a fee. But Darkrift 2 is extremely generous, so please support this project and give it a 5 out of 5 stars like everyone did if you enjoy it. It's definitely worth it, and it's much better than Darkrift 1, and Darkrift 1 was really good already. So import this. I've already imported it, so I don't need to do it, but what you probably want to take a look at these things, the demos, but you don't really need that, alright? So what you want is this, and once you import it, you will have to look for the zip file. So let's look for everything. There is right here, Darkrift server.net framework.zip. So this contains the server that you run on your computer. So let's just get that anyways. Okay, so I'm gonna download Darkrift, just this one, because I already downloaded the rest, but I just want to show you one thing. Okay, so it should be in Darkrift here. So this is the zip folder. Let's create a new folder called YouTube tutorial. And we'll drag this zip folder in here and unzip it. Extract all. And we'll delete the zip. So when you unzip it, you'll find these files. This is the server that you run on your computer or on a remote server. So if you run this, it will give me an error. How come? Because I already have a Darkrift server running and I cannot have two running on the same port. Here, it says listening on port 4296. Unfortunately, that's already taken. So I will just demonstrate what will happen if I run Darkrift 2 twice. Bam! I got an error. And that's it. It also generated some extra folders, which we will be using very shortly. But in order for me to demonstrate how to use Darkrift 2, I need to run two Darkrift at once. So how do I do that? The trick is to target a different port. So you see, I'm using the default port 4296. So if I right-click Server Config and open this in Notepad, you'll find there's a bunch of settings here, but the settings that I'm most interested is this one, the port number. That's just the default port number. I want to turn this to 4298. If you are not running Darkrift 2 already with your own game, you don't have to do this step. So skip this step if you are following along. But I have to do this in order to open two Darkrift 2 at the same time. So I saved it. Now, when I open Darkrift 2, it should work. And if you notice, the port number is now 4298. So I'm running Darkrift 2 on a different port. Now, let's create a new empty object. We're going to call this the Darkrift client. So this is an empty game object. It has nothing, no functionality. But I'm going to delete this folder first because we don't need it. We just wanted the zip. I already have Darkrift installed with the packages. So if you import Darkrift 2, you will see this. So here we have two folders. One is the client, one is the server. If you want to create a Unity-based Darkrift, you probably use this one, but I've never actually done it before, so I can't guarantee it. My guess is that you will use this, you drag it in, and then you will be able to access the things like physics. Your server can have physics and all types of things that are not available in a console application. But if you run using this is a console application, but it's slightly a lot faster than the Unity. So if you like speed, if you don't need a lot of fancy stuff, I recommend using this. This is what I use for my game. I used the console type of Darkrift server. So remember, there's two types of servers. One is console based, one is Unity based. I'm using the console. If you want to use a server based, there might be another tutorial by someone else, but I can't do that because I have no experience doing that. Alright, so what we're doing is we want a client. So a client is basically a player, a game user, an end type user, a person who connects to the server and does their own stuff. They play the game. So this is the Unity client. I'll drag this over here, and I want to make sure to change the port number because I changed the port number over here. Okay. Do not do this step if you are following along. If you have 4296, make sure this is 4296, not 4298. Great. Oh, actually, if you are following along, you would also notice that I'm missing a field. That's because I removed it. So I guess I have to import Darkrift 2 all along. Sorry, I am absolutely sorry. But I'm going to have to delete this Darkrift because I modified the Darkrift script. It's not it's not Darkrift anymore. It's a variation of Darkrift. So I made my edits. So I'm going to import everything. Import. I missed a few things, but should be okay. And I'll drag this into third-party assets. Oops, there's two Darkrifts, so I'll drag this. No, it's not good. So I'll I don't like nested folders. I don't like folders where both of the folders have the same name. It's like opening a Russian doll. You open one doll and say, "Oh, it's Darkrift." You open the doll, it's another Darkrift. As well. Okay, so let's try this again. So empty game object client. Drag this in and change this to 4298. And you would notice the address is 127.0.01. That's local, so you're talking to your own computer. If you were to actually release this, you would have to change this to your IP address. There's a whole other field of learning where you can set up static IP or dynamic IP. I don't know if you need help with that, but there are tutorials out there. So if you need help setting up your IP, you can check out other tutorials by other people. But for now, we're using a local IP. If I press play, guess what happens? I connected. So we are connected online to the server. The game is talking to the server. It let the server know that we've connected from 127.0.01, which is right here, and we are connected. Unfortunately, it's not doing much because Darkrift 2 needs to have some plugins for functionality. So plugins are like tasks or logic that you attach to Darkrift 2 that gives it the ability to respond to your game and to communicate with the client. We need to have two different types of client. The first one is the uh, database. So we need to talk to the database. So Darkrift 2 talks to the game, like hello, hello. So talks to the game. But Darkrift 2 also talks to the database. So I have a database right here. So Darkrift 2 needs to fetch information between the database and Darkrift to get persistence. Fortunately, I've already created a Darkrift 2 plugin. I will show you. So I uploaded my SQL connector over here. So you can check out the link on the description. You should see a tiny upload link. That is just a text file, and it has an SQL connector. So what you want to do is you want to create a new DLL, C#, and just copy and paste the text and compile, and then drag the DLL into your Darkrift. So I'll show you where Darkrift this is. So this is your server. You want to drag it probably into your lib folder or your plugin folder. I actually never dragged it into my lib folder before, but I'm going to give it a try. So I'm going to create a new I'm going to create it right in front of you so you have an idea what to do. So it's I don't want to be here. I want to be in okay, so desktop YouTube tutorial. Let's create a new folder called VS Projects. Hopefully, oh wow, Visual Studio Projects. Let's hope we don't get confused of all the folders. I normally get confused pretty easily. So let's type, what do we call it? My SQL connector. So I'm gonna grab this, download it from the web. My SQL connector.cs. Okay, so it's written by me, and the thing is, the only thing you have to watch out is for this here. So you need a username, password, and database name. So I'm going to enter, I'm going to copy all this, paste it into here, and we need to get two different types of reference. So I'm going to get this over, I need SQL. Where is my SQL? I will have to browse for it. I'm going to steal it from my other project, but you have to find it yourself because game dev, Ploxe Online, Ultimate Project, Visual Studio. Let's steal it from here. I want my SQL web, so I'm going to import these. You should be able to know how to find these. If not, then you need to probably get a NuGet package or look for it online. So great. So now I need to enter the database name. So my database name is tutorial MMO, right here. Tutorial MMO. And I'll enter the username and password. But first, I'm going to check the username and password on my project. So I store this somewhere here. Ultimate Project, Visual Studio. Okay. Sorry if I'm not showing you my password, but it's important for me, so I need to double check to make sure that everything is okay. Okay, so I think that's it. So now it should be compiled, and make sure to compile it and release. Okay. Now it should be fully compiled. So I'm gonna fetch it. I have so many folders. It's a MySQL connector. Great. So a thing to remember is you need to fetch these DLLs, and then you need to copy them into your Darkrift server folder. You can try copying it in your lib folder. So I'm gonna copy these DLLs and I put them in here. I'm not sure if you need all of them, but I will verify quickly to see if you need all of them. So what I have here is I have my SQL data, and I think that's it. I don't think you need anything more than that. So I'm going to delete this, and delete this. That should be enough. Great. We will test this later to see if it works, but technically we should be able to call static functions within my SQL connector that will connect to your database. That's another topic because SQL was not included in this tutorial, but it's part of the project we're doing. Okay, so now that we have changed our things, make sure everything compiles again. Okay, still seems okay. Alright, so let's create our first login plugin. So Darkrift 2 has this plugin folder. We need to populate it with logic and DLLs. So we need to create a new project, and then we need to create the functionality in the client to respond to the logic over here. Okay, so I'm going to open Visual Studio 2017. and create our first plugin. So let's call this login plugin. And YouTube tutorial, Visual Studio Projects, that sounds good. Great, so this is an empty project. We call this login plugin. So the way you create a Darkrift 2 plugin is you have to import Darkrift first. So let's do that. Right click, add reference. So I'm going to go to my desktop where I have my YouTube tutorial. No, that's not it. So desktop, YouTube tutorial, Darkrift server. So remember, this is the zip that we got from the Unity package. So we unzip this and this is what we got, right? So if you go into the libs, you'll see two DLLs, Darkrift client and Darkrift DLL. We want to include those. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. Ignore. It's Darkrift server and Darkrift DLL. Do not import the Darkrift client because we're not making a client, we're making a server for now. Okay. So now that it's in our reference, we should be able to use Darkrift. Great. So we are inheriting from plugin. I hope you really get a C# because I'm not going to go through inheritance. But when we inherit from plugin, you'll see it does not compile anymore because there are certain members to override. So first of all, we need to get the, let's see, thread safe get. Okay, so we need to do public override thread safe. And I will say true because we're going to assume this is thread safe. I hope you know about thread safety, so make sure not to write to any global variable on multiple threads, then you'll be okay. So public override, we need to provide the version. So the version of your game is new version 1.0.0. So as you upgrade your login plugin or your plugin, you can upgrade the version. So like I always keep at 1.0.0, but that's bad practice. You should always increment it, alright? So public override commands. This is optional, but you see this is an array of commands. So we can create a new command array. Command is the type. I might be doing something wrong, so I will consult my previous project again because that's where I actually got it right. So I'm going to consult this. Alright, so I have to say new command. And that should be okay. Alright, so what are commands? Commands allow you to interact with the server over here, and it allows you to do something like type like kick player E for everyone players. Let's just say boom. And unfortunately, we did not define kick players, so there's no plugin with that command. So, or we can do something awesome, and again, we haven't defined that, so that command doesn't work. Or we can do something like start maintenance, and it's like or like that. Okay, so we can define a command right now to show you something. All right, so we will define a command to set debug on or off. So I'm gonna do something really terrible. I'm gonna uh, create a new enum called debug level. Right. So I'll call this errors only. Minimal. Or let's call normal and verbose. Okay, and then we'll create our own public debug level equals debug level. Let's do errors only for now, or let's do normal for now. Okay, so you want to um, debug onto the console just in case something goes wrong, or just to give confirmation that something is happening. For example, a player logged in, or a player is hacking the game, or something crazy is happening. So you want to populate this, right? So, but sometimes you don't want too many messages, so you want to be able to control how many messages you see on the command. So how do we create a new command? So you put all your commands in this over here. You want to create an array of commands. So let's create one. A new command you want to name. Let's say set debug level. A description sets what type of logs we print to console. And usage, let's say flags equals error only. New line, n equals normal. New line, I'm sorry if this is unreadable, but v equal verbose. And handler. So we need to specify what method will run when you use this command, alright? So it needs an event handler of command event args. So let's create that. So public void set debug level. We need object o and command event args dot. Okay, so this should work. Great. So every time you type set debug level, it will call this method. And we want to be able to pull the flags. So we'll have three types of flags, right? We have E, N, and V. Everything else we'll ignore. So we'll have a if command event args dot flags dot or has flag E. So great. We want to set the debug level to errors only. Else, if command level has n, then we set the debug level to normal. Else, has flag V, Then we'll set debug level to debug level verbose. Great. So well, we can put one more thing and then we'll test it. But that one thing is we want to be able to output to the console. So how do we output to the console? So if you, I put over here, write event. So it takes a string, like this is my message, and we'll take the log type, and here are the log types over here. And we can also attach an exception. So I'm going to create a few new functions. I'll call it public void log debug and public void log warning and public void log error. So for log debug, I will type if debug level equals to debug level verbose. Then we output the string. So write event text. Log type is info. To keep it consistent, maybe we can rename this to log info. Great, so we can copy and paste this. So this one is if equals verbose or debug level equals debug level dot, let's say, normal. So we'll write the text, and instead of info, we'll take warning. Finally, I'm sure you can see this coming, I will just write event, because we always want to print out the errors. You don't need to create these functions, but this is one possible way to do it. So when I saw a different tutorial from Yasil, he had a ton of functions like, okay, so he had a bool called debug, is debug. I'm going to show you what Yasil did, right? So is debug. So this is another YouTuber. So it's false. So what will happen is when he wrote code, it was like if is debug, then write event. So this was happening everywhere. So it got really tedious. You know, we have to put debug is debug everywhere, is debug everywhere. So if we centralize the logging checks to just these three methods, you can change it very easy without having to hunt down is debug every single time. It makes the code a bit messier, I think. That's my opinion. So that's a small improvement in my opinion. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to demonstrate commands. I know that we're going a long way to do this, but let's try this, okay? Okay, so we forgot the constructor. Okay, and it would be nice if we notified everybody that it's working. So we set to errors only. This is just so that we can see it happening. Otherwise, we wouldn't know if it worked. Okay. Okay, and we need to create the constructor, otherwise it would not compile. So public login plugin. Uh, so I think, let's see, what do we need? We need base plugin load data. Plugin load data. Plugin load data and pass it to our inherited class. That should be okay. Two more things before we test this. I know we're doing a lot. Is what is over here? Okay, so plugin load data has two events. So I hope you are familiar with events. So here are the events: client connected and client disconnected. So as your server runs, you will have a bunch of clients connecting to your server and disconnecting to your server. So when they connect, you want to register them to a method over here. So public, let's call it, we need to find a method that has event handler, client connected, event args. So void client connected, object own client connected event args. Okay, so plus equals client connected. So whenever a client connects to Darkrift, then Darkrift will tell all of the plugins, including the login plugin, if you have the login plugin loaded, that, hey, we have a client that connected. And what do we do with it? We make sure that we do this method. All right. So what do we do in this method? We want to register the client. So let's take a look at the client connected event args. So we have the client, and whenever we get a message from the client, we want to process it. So we need to go get the message received. So public void message received. This is another event, object O, and message receive event args. Okay, so plus equals message received. So whenever the client sends us data, like, hey, we want to talk to you, we will go process the message over here. So we don't know what the message is. It could be anything, right? So I know I'm going far. So let's just say we want to find out what message it is. So how do we figure out what message it is? So the client sends tags and then a bunch of information. Can be strings, can be integers, but first it sends a tag. Excuse me. And the tag tells the server what the client wants to do. So if the tags equal 0, right? If tags, then we do what 0. But what is 0? 0 is like a magic number. It's up to you to define what 0 is. 0 can mean anything. It can mean login, disconnect, error, attack a monster, change maps. It's all up to you. You need to define every single number that you want from the ushort and map it to a message type, so subject. So we will do that soon. Void client disconnected, object O, client disconnect event. Oh, what? It auto completed. That's not what I want. Event args client. Okay, so we want to client dot message received minus equal message received. So it's very important you do this on every of your plugins. So for all of your plugins, you want these. So first thing you do is you take the client disconnected, and then you register the events. So whenever the client connects, you make sure that you register this event, and whenever the client disconnects, you unregister the event to clear everything. And then whenever the client wants to talk to you, this method will be called. Now this method will be called for all of the plugins. So if you have multiple plugins, login plugin, world plugin, chat plugin, all of these messages received will be fired, right? So let's just say we have something to do with, let's just say 54. 54, let's just say it's a attack monster, okay? Attack monster. But we are in the login plugin. We don't care about if we attack monsters. We only care about login stuff. Like we want to care about authentication, right? So if tag equal 54, you don't have to do anything. So the message will go right past and nothing will happen. And then the correct plugin will catch it. So a plugin is only interested in certain tags, right? So if a tag is 0, I'm interested. If it's this 1, I'm interested. If it's this, oh, I'm not interested. Maybe it's something not related to login, okay? So for now, I'll put a 0, which is a magic number, but don't worry, I will fix that soon. I know we're getting ahead, so there's a lot of stuff to do. Then we'll do login. Or actually, I usually do 1 as login, okay? So that is it, I think. And now let's compile on release. Yes, it compiled. Hopefully, this will show us a bit of what's going on. Okay, so I know I have a lot of this, so I'm going to close so I can find my stuff. YouTube tutorial, video studio, okay. So this is my login plugin DLL. After compile, you want to look for this, and we need to copy and paste this into the Darkrift server. Remember that zip folder that we got with the Unity package? This is it, right? So if you run this, you'll get this console. You can't find any plugins right now because this folder is empty. If you post it, it's not empty anymore. Let's see if it loads. Now you can say installed plugin login plugin version 1.0.0. Remember this version right here, 1.0.0, that's this version. Login plugin, that's the name of the class, right? So it looks like everything is working. But are the commands working? Let's see. Let's try something, set debug level. Okay? And see what happens. Nothing happens. How come nothing happens? But at least it didn't throw an error, right? So if I do this, it throws an error, which means this exists. But why it does not work? That's because I did not set a flag. Remember, we have to look for flags, and then only when we see the flag, we will activate the debug level. Okay, so let's go set debug level. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. So let's find out. So help set debug level. So, oh my goodness, I should not have done that. So the line, first of all, the new line is not working at all. So what I should do is I should not have put the new lines in here. Maybe it's like this. Okay, let's try this again. So I'm going to close this and find the login plugin again and paste it and overwrite. Let's try this again. So help set debug level. So right now I don't like the indentation, but let's take a look. Over what do we have here? We have the command, that's this one over here. Description is sets what type of logs we print to console. I mean, that's terrible English, but okay. Sets what type of logs we print to console. And here is the usage. So you can see how this command is built. the command, the description, and the usage. Okay, so let's use it. So set debug level. We set debug level to errors only. We set debug level to normal. We set debug to level to verbose, and nothing. All right, so that's how you use commands. So with commands, you can uh, you can interact with the server without having to boot the game. You can do a lot of things. Okay, so you can mute chat, you can refresh the server, you can respawn monsters. It's totally up to you. It's your game. But first, I'm going to just put another new line over here, and I'll just say set. How do we improve this? Set what type of logs? Which logs to print to console? Oh well, you figured it out. Okay, so make a nice description that is better than this. Okay, so next thing we need to figure out is the client connect. So we set this up over here. So if we sign in over here, we should connect. Client connected. That seems pretty good. I think it's okay. Is that okay? Okay. I think that is okay. So I think we have set up Darkrift, and the one last thing I will do before at the end of this tutorial, I'm sorry if it's a bit long, I will create another Visual Studio 2017 project, and Yasil also did this, but I learned it from Yasil, so we call it network tags. So why are we doing this? Because if you take a look over here, if e tag equals 1, but you don't know when 1 is, you can say login, you know? So we know what 1 is. But what happens if we want to change the value? Then we have to update all the comments. So I like the tags to be descriptive. So 1 is now login, right here, login is 1. But, so log out. And I like to do something like this. Sent by client, and I'll type the parameters, so string username, string password. Expects login failed or login success in return. So we know clearly who is sending this. So network tags are shared by both the client and the server. So they're both going to have this DLL in them, and 1 is always going to be login. But for me, it's only going to be sent by the client. So I want to specify that, right? So the server expects login from the client, and the client sends login. And when the client sends login, they expect a reply of either login failed or login success. So we'll login failed, login success. So sent by client, sent by server, response to login, and sent by. Okay, so we're not going to send. This will become clearer later, but I'll just write one more thing. ID response to login. Great. So I commented each enum except for this one. I'll say invalid tag. All right. So we'll never ever send 0. So if we send 0, we ignore it. The reason I do this, it's kind of weird, but I believe there was a bug in Darkrift 2 where sometimes it will send a corrupt message, and that corrupt message always had 0 in it. So I was reading the 0, and I was login was 0. So and I was like, okay, so the guy wants to log in, but it was corrupted and it's crashed the server. So what I do is I always set 0 to do nothing. So if I get the message 0, I ignore it because it might be corrupted. I don't know if the Darkrift 2 fixed that, but I suggest you do the same, okay? Do nothing is 0. So compile this, and release. We'll be updating this a lot, but for now it only has login. So for reference, I'll add browse. Sorry if I'm moving a bit fast and taking a bit long. Network tags bin, release, network tags, boom. Okay, so we can replace this with casting to ushort network tags over here, login. Now it's descriptive. Now we can delete the comments, and it's clear what we're doing. So whenever we get a login message from the server, the client, then we will respond over here. So now we have created a bare bone login. Oh man, so many things to do. I suggest you, if you want to do this for every single plugin, you can copy and paste it, or you can export it to a separate class and import it all. Copying and pasting is generally bad in programming, but just want to let you know. It's up to you. But anyways, we've created the first login plugin. It doesn't do anything right now except to register the client to call this whenever this client sends a message, and to set our debug level. Next time, we will work on the client side to send a login attempt. Okay, but thank you very much for watching. I hope it wasn't too long. I will see you on the next one. Bye.